Hello everyone, welcome to the course on concept selection for 3D character art. I'm Thomas Sackman and I will be your instructor in this course. In this first chapter, we'll see an introduction of the process of concept selection. We will go through some of the websites that I use in this process. We'll see the importance of a good concept in the process of creating 3D art pieces. We will download Pureref and we'll see some of the basics of this software. That is a really basic software to gather concepts and references. And we will talk a bit about your interest and what you should follow in the process of choosing your concept. Thank you so much for being here and see you in the next lesson. Okay, we are now in our browser. Here I will show you my top 4 sites that I use for selecting concepts. The main one that most of you might know is ArtStation. ArtStation is a great site where you have a lot of art, 2D, 3D, architectural, you have a lot. And I think it's amazing to search for concepts. The only thing with ArtStation is like it will be a bit tricky at the beginning, but when you start following people, it will make it a bit easier to find for stuff. For example, if we go here to the character design tab, to digital 2D, and you start searching, and let's say that I like this concept. And what I tend to do always is I go to the author, to the artist, and I see if there is any other concept that I like from him. And then what I tend to do always is I go to the following and I see which other artists this artist follow. And in that way, I will have like similar style pieces as the one that I liked at the beginning. And I think that's great. What we will do in this full series of tutorials is we will develop this concept from Julia Miss Jewel. Julia is an amazing concept artist from Massive Entertainment. And we will go through a bit why I chose this concept, why I think this concept is appealing, and why I think that this will be a successful 3D art piece at the end. Apart from ArtStation, other sites that I use is Instagram. Not a lot in the process of looking for a concept in particular, but I follow some concept artists' Instagrams, or I follow some sites like this one, for example, that they showcase concept art from different artists. And in that way, I keep inspiring myself. And if I like something, for example, I have this. This was one map that I did for my intermediate project when I was studying. And I did like a cyberpunk girl. So these were some of the concepts that I was looking for at the beginning. Then, a bit obvious, but Google, and not a lot of people use it enough, I think. Google is amazing to search for stuff if you know what you're searching for. For example, if we go here, you choose this concept, and then you will have similar concepts here. Google is trying to do something similar. Pinterest, that is the 4th site that I use and the one that I use the most. I think Pinterest for me is the best one for this stuff, because the great thing from Pinterest is like, for example, if we go here to this concept, you will see that Pinterest will recommend you a lot of art similar to this one. And that's amazing. And that makes you enter in a loop that is great. And you end having a lot of options. And maybe in a really short time, you are able to see like maybe 20 or 40 concepts and decide what you like and what not. For example, in this case, we are with this kind of creature stuff. And then if you like this one, you go here and it will recommend you stuff similar. So I think that's great. And in general, what I do is I take these concepts and I put it in Pureref, that we will see that in our next lessons. I think something essential in the process of creating a successful 3D art piece, not only character art, 3D art pieces in general, is the moment of choosing your concept. I think the selection of the concept is super important. Why? Because if you don't spend enough time, and a lot of beginner artists overlook this and they don't do it, if you don't spend enough time choosing your concept and you decide and you chose like a not strong enough concept, at the end, it's really difficult that your 3D art piece will be successful. Because even if you have really strong technical skills in 3D, if the composition is not good in the piece, if there is not enough interest in the concept itself, the 3D art piece won't be strong enough in general. Like there are exceptions, but I really consider that to choose a good concept art piece is essential in the process. And coming to this, we have sometimes some, especially new artists, as I said, they made the mistake of trying to make their own concept art. And if you want to be a concept artist, that's great. But in general, we are here to learn 3D art, not concept art, because they are like two different paths. And we need to understand that the concept art part of the process is quite different from the 3D art, and it's a completely new other world, and is really complex, and it takes a lot of time. That's why I think it's always better, if you want to focus in 3D again, to start from a concept from someone else. For sure, you will always need to reference that person in your artwork, and if you should put the link of their artwork itself. But I really consider that it's better to start from a concept with someone else and focus on your skills. That's the third point. If you take a concept from someone else, and a good concept, you can focus on your 3D skills. Because the design process takes a lot of time. Even myself, for example, I'm an industrial designer, apart from a 3D artist. And for example, you would say, okay, if I do a hard surface prop, I could design it myself, I'm an industrial designer. But the time that it takes to design that prop is almost the same that it takes to create a piece, maybe. So I would spend double the time to have a portfolio piece, when in a studio, like if your goal is to apply for a studio, a game or film studio, they won't be looking of how good you are doing concept art. You will look how good you are at taking a concept art piece from someone else and make it as best as you can in 3D. This is because in the game and film industry and TV, the concept art and 3D art are completely different beasts. And you will never have to, not never, maybe in a small studio could be, but in general, you won't have to do your own concept art. In general, what you will do is you will receive the concept art from a concept artist, and you will need to take that and make it as best as you can in 3D. So summarizing a bit this lesson, I think let's spend a good time choosing our concept art, and that will help us a lot in the final result. I will go through some great examples here. For example, here, this is an art piece from Dina Salama. Dina Salama is a great 3D character artist. And for example, in this piece, she based her artwork in the concept art from Niva Chantara, and that gave her a great base to create this piece. As you can see, it's not that the 3D artist is replicating exactly the concept art, but she had a base from where to start, and then she was able to put her own creative input and design the rest of the piece. For example, all the bottom part she didn't have it in the concept art, the arms changed a bit and stuff, but the base was from this concept art. And what she does is just she referenced the concept artist in her artwork, and that's perfect. In some cases, you might want to contact the concept artist to ask them if they're okay with that, but in general, if it is a personal piece, they would be glad that you do it, and no one will get offended with that. Always if you mention the concept artist. But for example, even in concept art, some people base their work in something else. Nothing is created from nothing. In this case, Niva Chantara, sorry if I'm pronouncing his name wrong, here he based his artwork in this picture. So he started from this, and he decided to create this as a robot. And that again, she started with a good base and a good idea, and then she ended in a good concept, and this concept ended being a great 3D art piece. So as you can see, like nothing starts from scratch, and it's a good way to save time in what I mentioned, and also to create a successful piece instead of trying to spend a lot of hours in something that you are not good at, maybe. For example, here is another example from Khalid Osama. This is a piece from like around a year ago or so from him. And in this piece, he based his work in this concept art. And as you see, like, it's a really nice 3D art piece. A really useful tool that I use quite often in my process is called Pureref. Pureref is a really simple but efficient tool that allows you to basically put images in a canvas. And in this way, it's a great tool for gathering concepts and gathering references. So I will show you a bit after how Pureref works itself. But first of all, we'll go to their website and you go to pureref.com. You can go here to get Pureref. And here you will have the option of choosing your platform, Windows, Mac, or Linux. And then you can select an amount. Another great thing from Pureref is that if you need it, it can be for free. You can decide to pay 10, 5 euros, or if you want to get it for free, you can press 0. You press download and you get Pureref for free. I would really recommend you to support the developers, but it's your choice. So now in Pureref, as you will see, this is Pureref. Pureref is basically just a canvas, not more than that. So what this allows you is to gather as many references as you want here, as many images as you want. So the basics of this is that how you go through this. If you press right click, and you keep pressing right click, you can pan the canvas itself. With the scroll wheel, you can zoom in and out. If you press the scroll wheel, you will pan within the window, within the canvas, as you see. And then with the right click, you can select images, make it bigger, smaller, and as you want. So something important in Pureref, one of the main tools of Pureref, is that you have a lot of shortcuts. So what you do is, I think that will help you a lot. If you learn the shortcuts in your process, it will make the workflow much faster. So what you can do is you can press right click here for the menu. And here next to each action, you will see the shortcut here. So for example, to transparent to mouse is Ctrl-T, always on top, Ctrl-Shift-B, and stuff like that. So I will show you some of the options here. For example, here, if we decide we have these images that are a bit disorganized. For example, this is bigger, this is smaller, for example, and we want all these to be a bit more organized. What you do is we select everything, we do right click, image, normalize, hide, right click, image, arrange, optimal. And Pureref will do the best effort to make everything organized like this. So what you can do, how I usually work with Pureref is, for example, I keep it here. Well, if you press Ctrl-Shift-B or right click, mode, always on top, always on top here, Ctrl-Shift-A, not B. What you will have is that the canvas itself will keep on top of everything else that you have in the window. So for example, if you are here in the browser, Pureref will keep on top. So this is great when you work, for example, you work in ZBrush or in Maya, you can keep always your concept next to your work to check it. And also, how this works, how I work with this. Like, you can go to an image and do copy, paste if you want, or Ctrl-C, Ctrl-V. Or how I do it usually is you just grab the image and throw it here. So what you can do is you can throw all the images that you want here. Then let's go here. And as I mentioned before, you select everything, right click, image, normalize, hide, right click, image, arrange, optimal, and you have an optimal arrangement. Then you can press Ctrl-N and type concept, for example, and you start having your concepts organized. So in this way, Pureref, I think, is great because, for example, if you are in Pinterest, as I mentioned before, you can just throw all the images here and you have it here and you can have it organized. And for example, if you want to make this super tiny, Pureref will keep this always the resolution, and that I think is super helpful. So okay, let's delete this. And as I mentioned before, what we will do during this series of tutorials is we will focus in this concept. So what I did here is in Pureref, I took the main concept and some concepts similar, some references similar, just for inspiration, but we will focus in this one. Okay, see you in the next lesson. Okay, now that we know where are we going to search for concepts and how are we going to gather all these concepts together, something really important at this point is your interest. And why I mention this? Because sometimes we tend to try to follow trends because some kind of 3D art piece is really popular, and some people end doing things that they don't like just to follow a trend, and that's really not good. I think it's super important to try to do what you love, because there is something that you need to take in consideration, that you might be working in this character for maybe 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, you don't know. So if you don't really love the character and you don't have like an emotional attachment with the concept, you will get tired super fast, and that won't be good, because you might end not finishing the piece or finishing in a rush because you don't want to work on it anymore. So I think my key advice would be to try to search for something that you love. For example, if you love playing games, like try to search and imagine which type of games do you like, and which type of games do you like the style and the look and feel. For example, it will be completely different if you like more the Fortnite style than The Last of Us or Horizon, as I mentioned here. For example, like if you go with The Last of Us, you need to do something much more realistic, and you need to go for maybe a human character and something like that. For example, if you want to work in some moment in Naughty Dog. If you go for Horizon, maybe you would like to do more robotic creatures, and that would be your thing. Or in Fortnite, you need to do more stylized characters. So depends of the type of games that you like, or the type of style of game that you like, the character that you need to choose to do, or the concept you need to choose, it will be completely different. It goes the same with movies or TV. For example, if you like more the Pixar style, doesn't make sense to do something super realistic, because like what you want, if you want to work in Pixar in some moment, you should try to focus on something like that. Or it will be completely different if you want to do like a superhero, or a realistic character, or you want to do Godzilla or a giant dragon, for example. So stop 1 second and think which kind of work, in which kind of studio you would like to work, or in which kind of game or film. And then from there, I would do like 2 main divisions. That one is like if you like stylized or realistic, and that will help you to decide at the beginning. And then if you want to do more human style or more creature style. And take 1 moment to think about that. And I would ask you to gather some concepts after all what we talk in these lessons, and put them all together in your Pureref, so we can proceed to the next chapter. Welcome to the second chapter. In this chapter, we will take a look at what makes a character appealing. We'll see the concepts of shape, silhouette, and contrast, and why this is important in a character. We'll see some examples of successful 3D character pieces. And we will go through the complexity of these concepts to see if we can achieve a good result in the timeline that we have. As a first point, what I want to talk about is what makes a character appealing. And what is appealing itself? Because like you might hear around that a character needs to be appealing, but what is appealing itself, right? So appealing is something quite difficult to explain, being honest, but I would define it as something attractive and inviting. The character needs to call your attention from several reasons. There is like kind of a misunderstanding of appealing in general, that people tend to think that appealing needs to be something cute. For example, if you see the picture on the left, you can see that the character from Coco, he's a cute character and he's super appealing. Like you tend to have a feeling with him. But also, these other two characters are completely different. I wouldn't say that they are cute, and they're still appealing, because there are different elements that make them appealing. So, as you can see, like for example, here you have two other examples of characters that this is 2D concept art, and also completely different from the first three that we saw, but they're also appealing. They're inviting you. You want to know what happened with this character and what's the story. And that brings me one of the most important things that I think defines appealing, that is the matter like the character needs to tell a story. So when you look at a character, even if it is standing, like because of the pose, the expression or something, you need to see a bit of the story. The character needs to tell a story, and that for me is appealing. So as I mentioned before, could be appealing in the cute side or could be appealing in the aggressive side like this character, but still is something that draw your attention. And there is some concepts that we will touch in the next lessons, that is silhouette, shapes, and contrast. That helps a lot to make a character appeal itself. So, and also something really important in the matter of being appealing or not is that the character needs to have a harmony, like between the shapes, needs to be between shapes and details, for example. So as you can see in this character here, like there is a harmony between her clothes, her pose in this case, what is she holding. There is a contrast between some of the elements, and this makes this character to be really inviting. So something really important is that the character needs to have a personality. So sometimes you see character art pieces that you see that something is missing, and sometimes is the personality. So in general, when you choose a concept, try to choose something that is already in a pose or has already an expression, because that will make you to connect much better to the character. For example, here we have a great example of an appealing character. Here we have Toothless from How to Train Your Dragon. And this is a great example because it has something that I would say that also is super important, is familiarity. So you need to feel some connection with the character, as I mentioned before. And especially when you create creatures, it needs to have some correlation with or the human figure or an animal movement and expressions and stuff. And with this character, you see that there is a lot of that around it. So you will see that it has some animal stuff, like for example, you would relate it with maybe a cat or a dog, the movements, the expression, how he moves the tongue and the tail, and how all that makes him to feel familiar. And in this case, yeah, appealing goes to cute, but also the shape itself. They're like curved shapes, and it has some areas of high contrast in terms of shape, and some areas a bit more clear. The contrast with the eyes and the body, and that makes this character to be super attractive. Some of the key elements on a character are the shape and silhouette. As you can see in the image below, you will see that all these characters, even, or if at least you saw them at least a couple of times when you were younger maybe, you can see that they are super recognizable, and only with the silhouette. So here you don't have materials, you don't have depth, they're not in 3D, it's just, there's no colors, anything. It's just a black image of the character, and you can recognize it automatically. So I consider that the silhouette is one of the most important things on a character. So take that into consideration when you choose your concept. See if the concept itself has a nice silhouette and recognizable, and also like how you would represent it in 3D, and that 3D piece needs to have like a nice, and I wouldn't say nice, doesn't need to be nice, but needs to be recognizable. So if you turn all the lights off in your scene, you need to recognize the character itself with the silhouette. For example, in our character, the character that we will start working on now, you see that there is a really attractive silhouette here. So if you go here, you will see that there are not a lot of straight lines. Everything is really organic. There is something really recognizable here with the dreadlocks that I think will make it really nice. And you have a lot of negative spaces. That this is super important in silhouettes. As you see here, or you see here, you have some areas where you have like negative space, and that makes the character really appealing in that way. So if we go here to this image, this is one of the first sketches from Julia, where she was exploring different options. And here you see that this was a concept that she chose to develop a bit more. And here you see a simplification of the character in terms of shape and form. So here there are like the essential shapes, where you see, for example, here the rib cage, here the jaw, for example, and you can see already here, again, without colors, without anything, that there is a really interesting silhouette and really interesting shape. Another key element in art in general is contrast. But not only in art, also in photography and design, for example. Contrast is what drives the eye of the viewer, where the artist wants that eye to go. So contrast can go in different ways. Could be contrast in value, could be contrast in color, could be contrast in shape. For example, in our case here, you have, if we go to the contrast in shape, you have different areas of the character where you have a lot of complexity and some areas that are much more smoother. So, for example, if you see this area here, you have all this shape that is really smooth, and then we have all this complexity here. The same here with the face and the hair. So in that way, your eye goes to different areas of importance that the concept artists want our eye to go. So in that same way, we will do the same in the 3D art piece that we make. If we go to the contrast in value, here we can see that there is really nice areas of contrast. For example, here, again, the eye wants to go always in a character next to the face. We have some areas of contrast here in value, for example, with the bracelet. The same here with the axe. So the eye goes to these different places. And there are some areas that doesn't have so much contrast, so your eye rests. Also, an area of contrast is in general the face. So in general, like most of the eyes of everyone, is white background with like dark, or let's say could be a light color, but in general the eye itself generates really nice contrast. And here, for example, we have a really nice contrast between the face and the hair. And if we go to the contrast in color, here this is a piece that doesn't have a lot of contrast in color if you see it like directly, but there is. For example, if you see here, this area here, where we have the skin that is a bit brownish going to a bit orangey, and the belt that it has a bit of blue, you will see here in the color wheel, you will see that it will be something like this, in this way. So that generates a really nice contrast. And in other ways, for example, here you have orange with more like red with green, purple with yellow, and these type of colors contrast generates a lot of attention and drives the eye to that places. But not always needs to be a full color, full red with full green. For example, as we are saying here, you have different colors that the tone of the color is low, because in this piece, she's not trying to call a lot of the attention with the color. But as I mentioned before, the attention goes a bit more to the contrast in shape and in values. Now we are back to Pureref, where I want to show you some 3D characters that I consider really successful and why I consider them successful. First of all, we will start here with the master Rafael Grassetti. He couldn't not be here because he's really an amazing 3D artist. And here you can see, and also in this case, he was the creative director for this. So what you will see here is that for God of War, most of you might know this game and this character. But from this 2D concept, like how he developed the 3D character is is insane and it's amazing. And as you can see, a lot of the things that we are talking about the appealing side of the character, but not in a cute way, more like an aggressive or like intense way, I would say. And how you have contrast in color and value as we were seeing, and also in shape. So, and also the amount of detail, textures and stuff, like this character I think is really amazing. On the other side, going to a not human character, we have this character from Mahmoud Salah, that the concept was from Niba Chantara. And here you can see how the character, the 3D character really relates with the 2D concept. And this is amazing. For example, if you would apply for a film studio and they would see that you develop this 3D piece from this character, this concept art in this way, like, I think they will be amazed. And in this case, I think it's amazing. As we were saying, for example, the concept itself is really nice, has a lot of contrast, has a lot of interest, like it, even if it is a robot, it gives you some part of the personality and about some of the story of the character. And even in this case, the environment helps put this character in concept. Other 2 characters that I wanted to show was this one from Vinayak. Sorry if I pronounce your name wrong. But in this case, I wanted to show this because this is just a model. And so all what we were talking about, the contrast in value and color, we cannot appreciate it because all grayscale. But in this case, you have a lot of contrast and interest in shapes. And also you have a really nice silhouette. So same in this case. In this case, most of it you will have like, you have an appealing because you will really relate who is this character. So, and it's a really simple shapes, but as it's stylized, this gives a lot of interest. And you have some, as we were saying, like you have really interesting shapes here that generates contrast, some areas of rest, some contrast here, for example, between the mouth and the mustache, and here the same between the skin and the underwear here. So these 2 characters, I think they're really successful in that way. And last, so here we have a more realistic character. That is what we will be aiming for in this course. And this is a really successful piece. As you can see, it really looks like a human. You cannot recognize that it's a 3D piece, apart from some small details. But in this piece, what you see is, you see not only the character that it looks realistic, but also it has an expression. It's telling a story. He's looking at you, and he has even like the tire drop here that you see that he has some kind of emotion, how the smile is done, how the cheeks work with the smile. Like everything makes a really, really nice piece, and it makes this character to be believable. And I think that's super, super important. So when we go to in our next courses, when we go through the process of creating the 3D art piece, you will see how we will touch all these things that I mentioned before. What I need you to take into consideration now is the complexity of the concept. Because at this point, we need to determine a few things, that is like, how long are you planning to spend in this character and how much work do you want to spend, and also your current level and what are your abilities at the moment to see if you can achieve certain type of character or not. For example, here in the right and left we have 2 opposites, where one would be just a bust and the other one will be a full character with a lot of elements. Each of them has different levels of complexity, and if you go really deep only in a head, in a bust, it can be super complex. I'm not going to say no. But let's say that if you are starting, I would recommend you to start with something like this and not with something like this that has a lot of elements. So in our case, we will go to, as I mentioned before, with this character that I consider it like as a half middle range in terms of complexity, where we have a really nice area with really nice topology, really nice anatomy, and we have some props and clothing and hair and stuff. But in general, I would consider it a middle, or a bit going to complex, but in a middle range. So what we will do in this full series of tutorial will be to split this character in several courses. When, for example, the first one would be the model and texture of the head. So we'll be without hair, without the elements and stuff. So we'll be just focused on from the shoulders up, modeling and texturing. So in that way, you can start with one part of the character and not going directly to the full character. For example, in my case, my first project was more like half body or just a bust. And then I started working in full characters. So what I would like you to do to put all together the ideas of this chapter is I would like you to do a mood board with 4 concepts that you like. And I would like you to write down why you consider that these concepts are successful and why do you like them. And also why you consider them appealing. And we will follow that with the criteria of what we learn in this chapter. And we will move to the next chapter. At this point, you should have a mood board similar to this one. Could be with more or less images than this. But the important thing is that you have chosen already 4 of the main concepts that you want to develop. And in this case, what I focused the most, it was that all of this concept needs to have more or less the same complexity and more or less the same style. In your case, could be different. You could have different styles or different levels of complexity. But what I tend to do in this final decision is when I know already what's the level of complexity that I want to achieve, then it's more a matter of making the last decision in what I like the most about the concept and why I want to do one concept or another. For example, in my case, I decided to go with this concept because I think it's a great mix between anatomy, clothing, and different assets. And also I really like the hair. So that's something that I really want to develop myself. So sorry, there is another point that we didn't mention in the last lessons, that if you have already some experience, it's great to think about what do you want to develop while creating a new 3D art piece. For example, as I said, in my case, I want to focus on anatomy a lot. So I really like how this concept that you have really defined all the body and the muscles and stuff. And also that he has a really nice face with really defined shapes. So that's why I chose from these 4, let's say. Imagine that this would be my final decision. I chose this one to go. So in a case like this, what I do is I select this one, put it on the side. I would make this a bit smaller. I'm not discarding anything. I always try to keep my mood boards with the rest of the images around. But this will be my main concept. So this will be my main concept. And here, secondary. So in case in the future I want to go back and work on some of these projects, I have it already saved. But I will focus in this one at this point, and I would recommend you to make these decisions between some concepts that you want to do. If you will follow this series of tutorials, I would recommend you or to choose or to follow this same concept and follow the same steps that I'm doing. Or if you want to challenge yourself a bit, to choose another concept, but I would recommend you to have something with a similar level of complexity and also with similar elements so you can follow better the lessons. Now that we have our final concept selected, what we need to do now is to start planning the project. So as you will see in this image below, what I do is, for example, this is not for this project in particular, this is a previous project that I worked on. What I like to do is I do it in Google Calendar, so to have always to check every day what I need to do. But you can do it in any app or software that you want, or even by hand in your house, doesn't matter. What is important is to start planning. So what I tend to do is, first of all, I structure everything by a block out, then ZBrush sculpt, then whatever I need to do in Maya, then if I need to do Marvelous Designer, for example, if I need to do clothing, then if I need to do some assets, I group it together, and then UVs, I group it in as another task, and then texturing, grooming, lighting, and lighting and look depth, I put them together, and then render at the end. So what I tend to do is I assign depends of the length of the project, but let's say that it's a project of 3 months. I assign maybe between 1 and 3 weeks for every different task. For example, in this project, one of my previous projects, I took 1 week for blockout. Then I did 2 weeks or 10 days for ZBrush face sculpt. Then I took another 2 weeks to sculpt the body. Then, for example, I had a robotic arm that at the end I ended not doing the robotic arm, so then my schedule changed. So I left this schedule here, that is an old one, just to show you that you will make a schedule and you will have everything planned, and that plan might change. You don't need to stick 100%. Try to stick as much as you can, but also be flexible. For example, in my case, I was planning to do a robotic arm, then at the end I didn't do it, so my schedule changed. What is important to do is to update your schedule when you have that, and to try to stick to that as much as you can. Also, another thing to consider when you plan is that try to put double the time that you expect that will take, because in general in 3D things take much more than you expect. So for example, in my case, I thought that I could do the face sculpt in maybe 5 days. So I put 10 days to work on that. And again, it will all depend on which project that you're doing and in what do you want to focus. Because for example, in this project, the face sculpt, I assigned 10 days because the face is not the main thing, because in this character, the character has a mask, so the face won't be so prominent, let's say. It's always important, but it is not the main thing of the project. But for example, in my Bedouin Elf project, I spent maybe a full month sculpting the face. So that will change a lot, depends on the project that you are doing. So, but take into consideration that and take some time to build a proper plan for this. And don't hesitate to ask me if you need any advice of how many days you need to apply for each section of the process. For example, for this project, I divided this in courses. So what I will do is this full character will be a full series of tutorials where there will be 7 courses. For example, the first one will be this one, that is the concept selection part. Then second one, realistic face. Third one, realistic human. So we will work in the entire body. Then hair and fur. Then we will go to the clothing. Then we will work on the props. And at the end, we will do the final look depth and lighting and rendering at the end with V-Ray and Photoshop. So with this, you have an idea of how will be the process. And I want you to do the same with your character. Now that we have our plan of action done, we are back to Pureref, where we will start searching for references. This part of the process is, I think, is essential, and we really need to take a good time to search for good references. A lot of artists tend to think that it has something special to work without references, but I would tell you, like, most of the artists in the industry, like, they work always with reference next to them. Because in this way is the best way to replicate reality, and that's what we want to achieve. So I will go back to our browser, and I will show some options of websites that I use for this. One of the main one is Pinterest. Pinterest doesn't give you images with really good resolution, that's true, but for a first mood board it's great because you can start, for example, in this case I was looking for the pants of the character, and you will get similar pants. Well, sometimes you get things completely different, but in some cases you will get similar, for example, similar pants than this one, and you keep searching, copying and pasting in your Pureref. Another great website where you will have a bit of more resolution in the images is Getty Images. For example, if you open this image, you will get to this, for example. And if you want the images in the original and big resolution, you will need to pay, and it's crazy amount of money. But these images already here has enough resolution for what we are looking for at the moment. So take a look at it. Doesn't have a lot of images, but sometimes I find good stuff there. Another great site is Flickr, where you will see a lot of really good quality images also. Shutterstock is good also. You need to pay a subscription if you want to download the full res, but also you can, for example, for your mood board, you can search for images and you will have a watermark, but sometimes it it works enough. Because, for example, in this case, we want to see not the texture of the skin, but, for example, the bone lilar marks here and the shape. And with this picture will be enough. Then another site that is really good is 3ds, especially for human. So what you can do here, you have like 3D scans and pictures of people. So you have the options here of searching from gender, age, and stuff. And then, for example, let's say we go to this guy, and here, if you want to download the full resolution images, you need to pay, and you can download the set. But if not, like, for example, as we were talking about, like just for main reference here is good enough, I think. So sometimes I take images from here and I use it in my mood board. Then if you are looking for references more from movies, so for example, if you want to do a likeness of an actor or something, you are doing a character from a movie, you can go to movie stills. I don't remember exactly how much it is, but you can pay a fee for like 100 images that I did. It's not so expensive, and it gives you really good resolution images from this website. And then another one is Unplush, that has personal images, really good quality, and is royalty free. So take a look at it. I think it's good. You have a nice mix. Going back to Pureref, here what I did is I have always my main image, my main concept in the middle. And then here what I did, this is the mood board, like the general mood board. And then when we do each of the courses, we'll go a bit deeper in each of them. For example, when we do the next course, that will be the face, the modeling and texturing of the face, we'll go a bit deeper in this area. And I will go a bit more in facial anatomy and what are the factions and the elements of the face that we want to highlight. So for example, in this case, I took some people that I think that would fit with our concept, and I put them all together here. Then some reference of dreadlocks, a bit of an axe, clothing for the necklace, some body references, and some anatomy stuff that would be a bit more theoretical, and 2D drawings maybe, and some 3D references. So I always try to get real life references, so real pictures, but sometimes 3D art is good also to have an idea of what other people is doing and which is the level that you want to achieve. So take a look at this and start searching for references and make a mood board for yourself. And then again, when we go to the next tutorials, we'll go a bit deeper in each of the elements. As a final exercise for this course, I would need you to choose one of the 4 concepts that you chose in the previous chapter, and please write down why you consider that this is the concept that you want to do. Even if you decide to follow this concept that we will work together, like choose another concept and write down why you think that's a successful concept. And also, I think it's ideal for you to make a plan of action and to do a mood board like this with some general references. I'm super excited to create this character. I think it will be a really amazing process. And so I want to say thank you so much to you for joining. And I hope you enjoy it, and see you in the next course.